and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 16 of Dungeon Meshi. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Alright, so last we left off, the party was still in a bit of a bind, They have to head back to the surface, but things are sort of changing and shifting, seemingly to trap them. And, to make matters worse, Marcel briefly turned to stone. Kind of her own fault with, how she ineffectually tried to scare off that monster, but I don't know if you can really blame her, considering how dire the situation is. Now, I guess what is interesting is that there's something of a pattern, the way the walls change and shift, what buildings turn into other things. That is interesting. They can, I guess, figure out a pattern and then maybe get out of here if they're really smart about it. Fortunately, they have chill check, because I don't think anybody else would really be able to figure it out, but even so, they're not out of it yet. And I guess, this is an issue. I mean, noticing, the blood stain and how it seemingly looks as though Fallen was dragged off, that'll, cause a problem. Okay, so they don't see the blood stain or anything, but they do see that the carcass is missing, and it really shouldn't be. The carcass of the dragon, that is. Ooh. Wow. That's a rather gnarly looking zombie. And, oh. Oh, that's peculiar. It might be a hallucination or something. I mean, he did say something peculiar, like the magician's eye will be upon you, seemingly indicating that, there's the possibility they're being watched. Yeah, I'm thinking that is a hallucination just because, or maybe not a hallucination, like, magic or something like that. I guess the idea that something so frightful would be able to speak so calmly and rationally. Ooh. Oh. Well, that's interesting for the wall to just sort of, absorb people. I mean, I guess that's a good hiding place if there might be, something flying overhead, but oh. How utterly disgusting that must be. Now, the assumption is that this was Marcel's doing, that she had cast this magic, but okay, yeah. I guess I thought it was an inherent property of the wall. But Yeah, that's interesting. No, this was a function of the walls being moved. I guess that's just another interesting property of the dungeon and all that. You know, these little critters, dungeon cleaners as they call them. So I'm wondering, like, are they supposed to be like worms or something like that? Like something like, ooh, what would you call it? Like a bottom feeder in the ecosystem, something that does like sort of like menial decomposition work or stuff like that? I mean, I guess they don't really like decompose bodies necessarily, but like they effectively like repair walls and things like that via their secretions. So, I guess what I'm wondering is, are they like a natural creature, or are they sort of like a magical byproduct of the dungeon and the Mad Mage and all that? Because, you know, they're sort of complaining it to like the way the body repairs injuries with, you know, blood cells and platelets and all that. But is it a natural creature, or, you know, what? Because I feel like it's got a very oddly specific role for a natural creature. It really does seem like it might have been artificial. You know, I don't want to rule out the possibility one way or the other, because, you know, weirder things have happened before, but even so. Alright, so they're talking vaguely about preparing something, which naturally means they're gonna cook something disgusting. Oh, even worse, they have to put the frog suits back on. Oh. Oh. Wow, Marcel should really pay attention. You know, if she claims not to like wearing the frog suit, maybe she should, you know, take a clue from everyone else before she starts donning the whole thing. I mean, they really were just cooking food, and sure, it's one of those hideous pumpkins, but I mean, I would think that wearing the frog suit is much worse. So I'm wondering, like, what they're making, you know? Is it gonna be some sort of, like, sushi type deal or something? I mean, it's cooked, obviously, so it can't be, but wow. You know, it's another one of those things where, like, a cockatrice egg is this, like, horrible, soft, oblong thing. Man. Wow. I mean, that's a rather dour thought. You know, had I stayed petrified, would I have been used to help make this meal? You know what, Marcel? The answer is probably yes. Oh. You know, I'm not sure how I like that. That, the actual dish, the cookware, is also edible. And, you know, I think I could have told you that you probably, shouldn't. I mean, he's saying, like, as you savor it, it tastes like all this stuff, but none of that stuff sounds good either. Like, frankly, I don't see how this is distinguishable from just eating dirt. You know, maybe you should, stick to eating actual food. And I guess more to the point, maybe you should also watch your back, because they're seemingly being watched by, some nefarious people. Now, something tells me this is, not exactly what's going on here, but I get the feeling it's maybe like illusion magic or something. If only because that weird spider-like creature is drawn in a different art style. Oh. Oh, they're gonna make fun of the frog skin, aren't they? Marcel deserves it. Now, we have seen these guys before in, Not the previous episode, but I think the one before. And, maybe Shiro should have, led the charge. They probably didn't have to, effectively attack Lias and company, I'm wondering what the purpose of this whole thing was. Because, sure, Shiro didn't part on good terms with them necessarily, but he has no reason to harbor any animosity. And I guess it's also interesting that Lias is rather upbeat, I guess. Or at least he doesn't hold any hard feelings about Shiro abandoning the party. Although, if I had to guess as to a reason why, Shiro doesn't look all that good. He's got, stubble, he looks kinda sallow. When he left the party, initially, he was at least, clean-shaven, appeared more, sharp-featured, I guess, rather than kinda, dull and sleep-deprived. So I guess this is going to be interesting because this is sort of like a conflux of all these various parties coming together with Kabru and his friends. And they're still sort of under the understanding that, Lias and his associates robbed them multiple times, which, it kind of is and isn't true, but I guess, yes, they did take things from them, but it wasn't, it wasn't anything really bad, I guess. Now that seems, that kind of seems like a leap in logic to me, where Kabru would just say, okay, this guy doesn't look guilty. That means they either didn't do it or they probably had a good reason. I guess that kind of does check out, but I feel like if he and his party, were so set on finding Lias, maybe they wouldn't give up on this whole robbery angle. Now, it is kind of interesting. I'm interested in the interactions between Chilchuk and Shiro, because they seem to be occupying the opposite position that one would assume they would. Because, Shiro loved Fallen, and then he abandoned the party. Chilchuk didn't really want to get involved with this, but he did anyways. One would think they would be occupying the opposite position, but, it's worked out in this rather bizarre way. And interestingly, Shiro, for someone who loves Fallen, he's sort of saying, hey, aren't you guys acting a little rash just delving back into the dungeon? And, he might be right from a pragmatic point of view, but if he's in love, he shouldn't be pragmatic. Wow. Yeah, maybe he should, consider getting a grip. Although it seems like it is confirmed he hasn't been eating or sleeping. I'm glad that wasn't just an art style thing. He really is gaunt and pale and sleep deprived. That's a quick way to an early grave, You do have to eat and sleep. Especially if you're doing strenuous activity like delving through a dungeon, because, what was that old saying? I think it was Napoleon Bonaparte who said an army marches on its stomach. It's kind of a glib thing, but it is true, If your army isn't well fed, they're not going to get any fighting done, much less marching. Now, it is interesting that they're all seemingly excited about having a meal, as if to imply that this is an unusual occurrence. They don't normally stop for stuff like this. And I guess, Senshi is all up for this, a nice big meal with a whole bunch of people. What do you say, the more the merrier? Ooh, Frog Woman. It's kind of a low blow. I mean, Marcel's clearly an elf. So I find it interesting that they're being tasked with setting up a barrier to protect Shuro. So, I mean, like, sure, in his state he could probably use it more than anyone else, I guess, but, yeah, I don't blame Chilchek for being suspicious of this whole thing. There's a whole lot going on here, and, I think he's right not to immediately trust all of these people. I mean, sure, plenty of them might be trustworthy, but some of those retainers, like, the woman in white, I don't recall her name offhand, but, she certainly seems to be a scheming type. I mean, at the very least, she's devoted to Shuro. After the meal, he should have a nice bath too, hence why she's building this big fire. Maybe, building a big fire isn't a great idea in a dungeon with all the smoke. I mean, the smoke might attract monsters, but even if it doesn't, you are ostensibly in an enclosed space. So I guess it's nice that Laius is sort of eternally optimistic about all this. He really doesn't begrudge Shuro, and he even wants to sort of work together again, but, I don't think he's in any real fit state. Now, Cabru is asking the salient question here. Did you actually meet the Mad Mage? And if so, how can you be sure? And, if you are sure and it was him, how did you escape? And... oh, yeah. Unfortunately, the answer to Cabru's question is Marcel protected them and used forbidden magic to do so, which... I feel like nobody's gonna like hearing that answer. Understandably so, Oh, no. Man. That's almost a more uncomfortable question, Laius, why were you eating a brick? And he's also being kind of open about how they were eating monsters, too. I feel like maybe you should approach that with a bit more tact. Like, a lot of monsters are like wild animals, so... okay. Alright, that's good. At least Cabru's like, that's kind of funny. But, nobody's bringing up, hey, you guys didn't eat any humanoids, did you? Because I feel like that should be the immediate question. So I guess, that's something else. Laius is sharing the information, Living armor is actually just like a bunch of mollusks in armor, and, you can't eat them. Yeah, I feel like, sharing his love of eating monsters... like, a lot of people might take him up on that just to be polite, but I feel like that's not gonna end well, really. So I guess it's unfortunate that we're finally getting to the real uncomfortable topic here. Where is Fallen? Okay. Yeah, Laius is just kind of dodging around that by saying, hey, we don't eat orcs, but, yeah. Fallen might be on this level, she might be on a lower level, we don't really know. But she has been taken there, and that's not great. I guess finally Laius is having second thoughts about, is it safe to tell Shuro, and should Cabru hear this? I mean, at least they're, respecting his wishes, but there's still no good answer here. Because I get the feeling that, there have to be other implications to being taken by the Mad Mage. I mean, we've already gotten, a little hint of what he can do, so I feel like, You know, there are fates worse than death here. You know, being eaten by a dragon, that's probably not great, but I get the feeling that whatever happened to Fallon is, perhaps worse. Okay, so we're getting some insight into Shuro. He went to Maizuru and said, you know, like, look, there's this person I need to save, you know, will you help me? And, I guess good on her for helping, even if she doesn't have entirely selfless motives. So I guess that sort of explains her standoffish behavior. Yeah, you know, Chilchik might have been right to suspect her, but I do think at this point it's pretty clear her motivations are good-natured. To a degree. And, you know, I feel like Senshi's maybe, he's, poking the bear a bit. I mean, I guess it all kind of works out, you know, he's pointing out that she does love him and that at this point, like, it's really just unrequited. There's no resolution for that. I mean, I guess if nothing else, she can do everything in her power to help Shuro and ensure that his mission goes through well. Ooh. Yeah, so, oh. Okay. I wouldn't have expected this, but I feel like, perhaps throttling the person who knows the most about what's going on isn't exactly a good idea. Oh. Ooh, so he explained it. Okay. Yeah, that's not good. Alright. So I guess, seemingly they have opened up Fallon to, a potentially horrible fate. And oh, that's kind of, callous. You know, Elias is banking on the idea that Shuro will not spread word of this. Which, because I'm sure he's none too happy about this having happened at all, but, at the same time, he can't condemn Fallon, right? And, speaking of the devil, I suppose... Yeah, that's something alright. Wow. Yeah, that truly is a fate worse than death, I imagine. To be some sort of chimeric monster. I guess once again, Full Metal Alchemist springs to mind. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.